Hello and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. I am Bukola Koka. The headlines. House of Representatives condemns calls for interim government in Nigeria after May 29, 2023. Asks security agencies to be vigilant. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo calls for national reconciliation to ensure healing of the country. Federal government to officially open the second Niger Bridge on May the 15th to ease transportation. Plus, foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia and Iran meet in Beijing to discuss key details of the resumption of their diplomatic ties. That's News Round in View. A news round begins in the National Assembly, where more reactions are still trailing the alert by the Department of Security Services over alleged plots by some persons to install an interim government in the country. The latest is coming from lawmakers in the House of Representatives who have condemned the plot. This follows a motion of urgent national importance raised by Honorable Uyime Idem, drawing the attention of the House to the statement issued by the DSS.
It's the first plenary session of the week in the House of Representatives. Days after the Department of State Security Service issued a warning of alleged plots to install an interim government in the country following the outcome of the presidential election, a member of the House is worried and does not believe that the threats should be taken lightly.
Mr. Speaker, interim government is unknown to our laws. Interim government is undemocratic. Interim government is not something that we should support, taking into consideration that our democracy is a young one. At this point, I think it is our duty to do everything within our strength to support the current democracy that we are enjoying, to strive and then stay.
His concerns are shared by other lawmakers who condemn totally the idea of an interim government.
Every participant in this democratic process must fight this because it will take us 2.5 decades back. What do I mean by that? It's even speculative. Yes, it's speculative, it can be true, but how it will work, there could be a lot of bloodshed.
We should ask our people back home to stop comments that are hurting, to stop comments that are destroying our polity. What are you rioting for? Elections have been held. If there are infractions that you feel, go to court.
The security agencies should...
In further debate in the matter, one lawmaker berates the security agencies for failing to do their jobs, while another accuses former President Olusegun Obasanjo of culpability.
Is it not a shame that the security agents will come out and say they have the names of people that have muted this type of government in this country? You will not arrest them to prosecute them. You are wasting our precious time telling us to condemn it.
The first attempt at suggesting this interim was by our erstwhile president, General Olusegun Obasanjo, in the letter he wrote to Mr. President, condemning this free and fair election of 2023 and asking Mr. President to find a way of counseling without going to court.
While federal lawmakers condemn the calls for an interim government, they warn against heating the polity and advise aggrieved parties to await the outcome of litigation before the courts. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Elections have come and gone, and it's now time for reconciliation. This is the message from former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who is advocating for reconciliation and moral rearmament in order to ensure the healing of the country. Chief Obasanjo, who was speaking at a book presentation in Abuja, said the divisiveness which was manifest in the recent elections can be healed, provided the incoming administration is ready to embrace conciliation.
From elections to governance and performance, that's the subject matter of this event organized by Next Year and the Ibadan School of Governance and Public Policy.
80, sorry.
Former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who insists he's too old to keep quiet, says that Nigeria is more divided than ever before and as such requires reconciliation and healing.
Given what we saw during the elections, Nigeria is now even more divided and more corroded than we thought. This places a deep onus on any administration following the current one to urgently facilitate the process of national moral rearmament and national reconciliation that the potential to enhance healing for aggrieved and bereaved persons across Nigeria and to assuage the youth.
The former president laments the dwindling economy and huge national debt burden of the country.
Governance in Nigeria now calls for thinking outside the box in terms of development financing. These have become inevitable in the face of Nigeria's dwindling fortune in oil revenue, Nigeria's huge foreign indebtedness, and the urgency of diversifying Nigeria's monocultural economy.
Delivering a keynote address, the immediate past president of the Nigerian Academy of Letters highlights the essence of reforms in a developing society.
What will reform mean for the system? How do we proceed with reforms? What will change and why? Do we have a way of predicting the future? What are the frameworks for implementation? How do we manage the change that will arise?
The conversation is taken further as the keynote speaker identifies the challenges of reforms.
Nigerians have tended to celebrate the good old days, and we have taken poor performance to such a ridiculous extent that Nigerians yearn for the glory of a lesser failure. Repeated failure in the polity has led to a new norm in the zeitgeist, the benchmarking of failure.
The event comes to a climax with the public presentation of the book, The Unending Quest for Reforms, an intellectual memoir authored by Professor Tunji Olaopa, the Executive Vice Chairman of the Ibadan School of Government and Public Policy.
The federal government has announced an $800 million grant from the World Bank targeting 50 million vulnerable Nigerians or 10 million households as part of its post-subsidy palliatives removal. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, gave the announcement after the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari.
Ministers once again converge on the council chamber, armed with several memos. President Muhammadu Buhari kicks off the day's council meeting behind closed doors. When it was time to address State House correspondents, the finance minister announced an $800 million World Bank grant to alleviate the impact of the removal of fuel subsidy. This is coming 3 weeks after disclosing that the government was yet to harmonize discussions on palliative measures.
We've secured some funding from the World Bank. That is the first tranche of palliatives that will enable us to give cash transfers to the most vulnerable in our society that have now been registered in a national social register. Today, that register has a list of 10 million households. 10 million households is equivalent to about 50 million Nigerians. But we also have to raise more resources to enable us to do more than just the cash transfers. $800 million for the national scale-up of the National Social Investment Program at the World Bank. And it's secured, it's ready for disbursement.
Mrs. Ahmed underscored that engagements are ongoing with the newly established Presidential Transition Council and the incoming administration to drive the palliative program, which includes the need for buses among various considerations. Meanwhile, ahead of the 2023 National Population Census, the Executive Council gave a 10.9 billion naira approval.
The award of the contract for the supply and installation of information and communication technology components for the 2023 population census. This is for the National Population Commission, NPC, for census, and the ICT component contract was awarded at about 10.9 billion, nearly 11 billion naira.
The Federal Executive Council had similarly, on March 15, approved 2.8 billion naira for the National Population Commission to procure software for the conduct of the census in May. From the Presidential Villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, the federal government is set to officially open the second Niger Bridge on the 15th of May 2023 for use and to ease transportation of persons, goods and services. The Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, made the disclosure to journalists shortly after an on-the-spot visit to Loco Oweto Road and Bridge between Nasarawa and Benue states.
Even though the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is winding down, bridging the infrastructure gap in the country appears to be a major priority of the government. The Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, is here for an on-the-spot assessment of the Loco Oweto Road and Bridge.
And one of the things that this bridge has done, first, is to reduce the travel time. If you are coming from the southeast, for example, and you go through Otukpo to link Nasarawa, instead of going through Lafia to Kefi, you can now pass Loco and bust out at Kefi. That reduces your journey time by about 4 hours.
The Loco Oweto Road and Bridge are not the only projects on the minister's mind. He considered it a good time to announce the completion of the second Niger Bridge.
Dates that we have now for the completion of the link road, because the bridge itself is finished, as you saw when we went there. That's the second Niger Bridge. The link road that will formally open it to traffic, the date we have now is the 15th of May, as at yesterday. So we are rolling out all the stops to support the contractor to see that that date is achieved. And so a lot of snag resolutions are going to start. Lane marking on the bridge will soon start. Erection of signages, as you have seen on this road, will also soon start. So touch wood, just about 2 weeks before end of term, the president will be invited to the completion, and maybe any day thereafter.
As commuters await the official opening of the second Niger and the Loco Oweto Road, the federal government is reassuring that the 375-kilometer Abuja-Kano Road, which is the biggest of the three projects in terms of scope, size and budget, will not be abandoned.
You're watching News Round, and when we return, House of Representatives asks the Niger Delta Development Commission to put on hold the release of 15 billion naira counterpart funding for Niger Delta projects. We have that and more coming your way after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. To the National Assembly now, the House of Representatives is mandating the Niger Delta Development Commission to put on hold the release of 15 billion naira counterpart funding requested by the federal government. This was after a motion by Honorable Oyime Idem drawing the attention of the House to the federal government's request mandating the Ministry of Niger Delta to jointly finance an intervention and humanitarian program of sums running into several billions of naira using the money recovered by the EFCC without budgetary provision.
The first bill is referred to the...
Matters of urgent public importance took center stage during the last plenary session of the week in the House of Representatives.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Unyime Idem wants the House to address an intended breach of the Appropriation Act by the Niger Delta Development Commission.
Cognizant that the federal government sent a special request mandating the Ministry of Niger Delta to jointly finance an intervention and humanitarian program of sums running into several billions of naira using the money recovered by the EFCC without budgetary provision. The House resolved to urge the Niger Delta Development Commission to put on hold the release of 15 billion counterpart funding requested by the federal government, pending the approval of the Commission's budget by this Honorable House.
This motion is essentially to stop them from going further to spend 15 billion, which I understand is for flood control. Necessary to do that. Is it an appropriation for 2021, 2022, or 2023? So we must situate this properly.
Meanwhile, despite the denial of the NNPCL of paying 20 billion naira to ghost consultants and theft of multi-billion naira tax, the House, following a motion, resolves to carry out its own investigation.
Further informed that the say over 20 billion naira diverted by the staff of NNPC is part of the monies meant for the payment of taxes to state government in Nigeria by the corporation. Worried that if no action is urgently taken by these hallowed chambers to nip this unethical and unwholesome practice in the board, it will negatively affect the fortunes of our nation as well as deprive other states' government of its revenues.
In the meantime, a bill to prevent Nigerian-trained medical or dental practitioners from being granted licenses until they have worked for a minimum of 5 years in the country was passed through second reading. The House, however, rejected a bill to entertain petitions signed by Nigerians on specific interests, insisting that the Public Petitions Committee and the Public Complaints Commission already served the purpose. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
A framework for the presidential roadmap on police reforms in Nigeria has been presented to the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Usman Alkali Baba, by the Police Reform and Transformation Office. The document, developed in conjunction with United Nations Development Programme (UNDP), aims at ensuring police accountability, promoting transparency, and demilitarization of the police, among other objectives.
The Inspector General of Police, Mr. Usman Alkali Baba, is here to meet officials from the Police Reform and Transformation Office portal and the United Nations Development Programme (UNDP) for the official presentation of the framework for the Presidential Roadmap on Police Reforms, the reviewed Nigeria Police Act 2020, among other strategic communication materials. For years, the Nigeria Police has come under criticisms either for alleged corrupt practices or maltreatment of innocent citizens by its officers and men, a situation which gave rise to the NSAS protest in 2020, which saw the citizens demanding for the reform of the police.
Nigeria Police Force Strategic Communication.
But the representatives of the UNDP and the Police Reform and Transformation Office believe that is about to change.
These materials will be critical to improving the conduct and disposition of the police while maintaining professional conduct in relation with police, with the public and fellow officers.
We are hoping that over the next incoming months, the transitionary months, that we will continue our work, and in the fullness of this new administration, we'll now begin to see benefits of all the work that has been done in the past 2 years.
For the Inspector General of Police, reforming the Nigeria Police is top on his agenda.
The best way to inculcate these new ideas in our personnel is to make it a subject of study, is to incorporate it in our curriculum of studies, in our training institutions, and also for development courses, training the trainers, courses that every rank will adhere to.
Also presented to the IGP is a document containing the standard operating procedures for investigation put together by the International Committee of Red Cross, ICRC, in partnership with the Rule of Law and Accountability rollout program, as well as the blueprint of a 500-bed field deployment base camp to be located in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State. The reviewed Nigeria Police Act 2020 and these strategic communication materials are expected to enhance the activities of the Nigeria Police Force in ensuring adequate security of the citizens. From the force headquarters in Abuja, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
There's a call for every player in the Nigerian media space to play according to the rule of law in such a manner as to be responsible and, on the other hand, not to be seen as gagging the media. That was the central theme during an event in Lagos which signals the launch of the Nigeria Media Complaints Commission. The commission, which has its members from both the traditional and new media, also has on board members from the civil society organization and the academia.
At a time like this, when concerns arise in many quarters over alleged gagging of the media in Nigeria, media practitioners taking up the job of supervising compliance with professional ethics may just be coming at the nick of time. Practitioners and authorities in the media sphere in Nigeria are coming together to launch the Nigeria Media Complaints Commission.
There should be some checks on his powers.
The 9-man commission is to, among other things, ensure the regulations of the fourth estate of the realm is done by those who have significant knowledge and understanding of media operation. It also aims to serve as an independent forum for resolving complaints about the press timely and fairly.
Even though this is not an occasion for me to narrate the history of how we got here, I think a bit of background would help. All Nigerian governments, whether they are colonial, military, or civilian, have made and continue to make some effort to control the media, sometimes by stealth, sometimes openly.
The Ombudsman, as it is also called, takes its members from both the academia and the media industry.
Veteran broadcaster and author.
Chairman of the team, Mr. Emeka Izeze, makes a commitment of serving in the interest of both the media and its public.
Government, excuse government has always given in the past is that the media is operating illegally and they're doing things contrary to the law. Our argument in the past has always been that there are more than enough laws to try erring journalists. So if you publish libel, there is a libel law already existing. So you can be taken to court for that. But the government always they keep seeking for new ways to control the media, to control what is published, what is broadcast, what is sent out. This is to take the initiative ourselves to say before the government will even come, we would have done all the clearance work.
There's an intervention by our leading Nigerian journalist, Mr. Sam Amuka, who tasked the committee on the need to consider all sides, but in all, protect the freedom of the press.
All we have done in our life is that nobody in power will control the media. So what we are doing here today is the benefits that we have inherited.
What is where?
As members of the committee set to work, it's also soliciting the support of civil society organizations and other stakeholders in the media space. Timothy Crown at DBB, Channels Television News.
And finally on News Round, the foreign ministers of Iran and Saudi Arabia have met in Beijing for the first formal meeting of their most senior diplomats in more than 7 years, after a China-brokered deal to restore ties between the regional rivals. After years of hostility that fueled conflicts across the Middle East, Tehran and Riyadh agreed to end their diplomatic rift and reopen embassies in a major deal facilitated by China last month. Footage shows Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud and his Iranian counterpart Hossein Amirabdollahian greet each other before sitting down side by side. Beijing's role in the breakthrough between Tehran and Riyadh shook up dynamics in the Middle East, where the United States was for decades the main mediator. And on that note, we end News Track at this hour. Thank you. News Round, rather, at this hour. Thank you for watching. Join us again at the next hour for more updates. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.